David, good afternoon. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. Are you?
I'm fine. I hear you've been out filming.
Oh,
filming with another person.
I know. I stood you up for a man.
You did?
For a man, even. Yes, I know. It's a difficult life being a famous person of Beaminster. It really is, you know. But one learns to deal with it, as you know, from your appearance in the Marchwood Vale magazine.
Oh, yeah.
An awful lot of it, I found personally.
Far too much.
I felt very sorry for the other person who got a quarter of a page, but I
blame the editor, not me. I was just asked to provide some ideas.
I know. However, yes, the town council are making a film promoting Beaminster.
Fantastic.
And all kinds of people from across the town are obviously going to star in it, because I know they've been going since 7 o'clock this morning.
Goodness me. Wow.
And but my starring line was, we are proud of our heritage. That's it. That's all I had to say. As they panned, I think that's the right technical term, Harry will tell us if it's not, panned through me into the church. And there was another man holding a branch, so it looked authentic, as if I was under a tree in the churchyard. It all looked very, very good. And the real key about all this is the one man who obviously was the tree waver as opposed to the camera holder. He said to me that he'd looked to see what happened in Beaminster before he came, and he'd ended up watching Rev Chat.
How lovely for him.
I did suggest that he either had a sad life or he had nothing better to do, or perhaps it was raining and he couldn't watch the cricket. That would have been a good one. And he said, no, it's very, very good. He said, I watch it every week now. And he knows about Pat in upstate New York, because he said, is the lady from America still watching? I said, as far as I'm aware, she is, yes, we hope so. And he said, what about the people in Spain?
Yes, is it Lanzarote or somewhere? No.
Wherever it may be. So if you are still watching in Spain, thank you. I can't speak Spanish, but there we are. It's good to see you. So and then he said to me, how many people watch? Well, I got the number vastly wrong.
You did.
But
underestimated us.
And he said, well, good. He said, whilst people are watching, keep on filming. So that was great encouragement.
Well, it is encouragement. There we are.
Encouragement.
We've also been thinking about
thank you, every one of you who tune in each week. Thank you.
Now, we're trying to pre-record today as well, aren't we? So we're doing today, this is going to be for this Sunday, and then we're going to do next Sunday in a minute, and then we're going to do more because I'm on holiday. Do you think we'll get it wrong like we did when you went on holiday?
We could do. But you're not on holiday next week.
No, I'm not. But we're doing extras so we can do extra. Oh, it's very complicated. Anyway, there we are. Shall we crack on?
Just believe we're doing it normal. Just imagine that Joe's not on holiday. You won't feel jealous then.
I wouldn't feel jealous.
Walking on water.
All right then. Hang on.
Walking on water.
Pause.
Something you're used to doing all the time, of course.
Well, I'm off to the beach tomorrow, so I could give it a whirl.
Good. Faith, that's what you need. Read, dear lady, read.
Matthew 14, verses 22 to 33. This comes just after they finished feeding the 5,000. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but by this time the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning he came walking toward them on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You have little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God."
Famous words spoke by John Wayne in that dramatic picture about the death of Jesus. Surely he was the Son of God.
So your John Wayne impression.
I haven't lost it, as you can see. I didn't try it on the film earlier, as you'll be pleased to know. Now, it is one of your favourite stories, isn't it, this walking on water?
I do love this story. I love it for lots of reasons. One, because it's vaguely ridiculous. Well, it's just bonkers, isn't it? I mean, you know, they're shattered after they've been just fed 5,000 people, or more. Well, actually more as well. And then Jesus shoves them all off in a boat and is desperate to get away. And you just can really imagine, can't you? It's like, you know, when you've locked the church after a very long Sunday and you're desperate to get home to watch Call the Midwife. And he's sent the disciples away, and then he goes off to pray, and then a storm comes. And I just have this feeling of him kind of going, "Oh, I'm going to have to go and rescue them, aren't I?" He sort of walks out onto the lake, and the disciples are all going bonkers because they think they're going to die. And then they get scared because they don't know who it is. And then Peter leaps out of the water. I mean, what was he thinking? I think it's hilarious. And I love it because it's about faith and it's about enthusiasm.
Yeah, last week you accused me of having a downer on the disciples. Now I think you're attacking them, aren't you?
I just think
the poor disciples can't do right or wrong for you or me, can they? That's a feckless bunch at the best of times. So why did Peter get out?
Why did he get out? It's a really good question.
Why did he get out? Well, he didn't just get out, did he? He said, "If it is you, Lord, command me to come to you," didn't he?
He did.
So,
go on.
So he wasn't out of the water before he asked that. He actually obviously stepped out of the boat once Jesus had said, as we hear there, "Come."
What, so
and at that point, he obviously believed at first he could do it, didn't he? Then suddenly, like so many of us, he had a second thought, or he stopped to think about what he was doing, and down he went.
Exactly.
It's about faith. About faith, you see.
No risk assessment, just willing to plunge straight in there. Bonkers, I tell you, bonkers he is.
Well, it would have been bonkers if it wasn't so much that he trusted and believed in his best friend Jesus.
Oh,
when he took his mind off. It's when he took his mind off what he was doing. He suddenly started to go down.
You're right. We've completely reversed roles this week. You're suddenly Peter's greatest fan. Oh yes, it's his faith making him get out of the boat. Yeah, right.
Well,
it's not his faith.
No, that's what you can only think, isn't it? Let's be honest. If you were in that boat, I couldn't have been in it because it would have sunk with my weight.
Well, I'd be
if you'd have been, well, that's okay. But then you look up from one moment of throwing over and you see this shadow and you think it's a ghost, and then you realise it's Jesus, who's your best friend. And you suddenly say, "Jesus, call me if it's you." So Jesus says, "Come on, Joe." And without thinking, because you're not bonkers, you're so focused on your best friend, you leap over the boat. You take a few steps and you suddenly think, "Actually, this is down you go." And Jesus reaches out his loving hands to you, pulls you in and said, "You twit.
Wet.
Why did you not believe?" or words to that effect, in Aramaic, of course.
Of course. That's I mean, it's very Ignatian, isn't it? Putting yourself in the story. I like that. That's a nice.
I've got the whole remit of things, you see, Ignatian.
It's amazing. Yeah. I'm reading a really good book about Ignatian spirituality at the moment.
Good.
Like, anyway,
I've seen that in the show. Yeah.
Yeah, really. Good. It's really good. So, what about when Peter says, or Joe in the retelling says, "If you are the Son of God, command me to come"? Does that not take you back to the devil in the wilderness after Jesus' baptism? If you are the Son of God, turn these stones into bread. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I suddenly thought, oh gosh, it's that similar turn of phrase. Not that I'm suggesting Peter's the devil at all, but interesting that he's kind of, in his fear, there's also creeping in a bit of doubt, maybe. Do you think? You're not going that way, are you?
Well, no, I think it's a good thing to think about, and it wasn't not going that way. It hadn't entered my mind immediately, but I can see where you're coming from, and why that could change the story altogether.
I think I've been affected by the book I've been reading, because it was talking a lot about fear and about how people can be very scared of exploring faith. And they were talking about the context of how quickly we write off things as coincidence or just something emotional, instead of thinking that it could be God, and wondering whether we brush that off so easily because actually we're scared. Because if we do say that feeling or that emotion or that amazing coincidence was God, then actually we might have to do something about it. And so it's easier to brush it off as one of those funny things that happened, because we fear actually what it means to start to say, well, if that's God and God's active in my life, what am I going to do about it? And it's interesting, isn't it? Because the disciples are scared because there's a flipping great storm. I think it's perfectly reasonable to be terrified. And then they're scared because you don't normally see people walking on water. And then Peter's scared when he realises the stupidity of what he's done. So I think there's perfect validity for their fear. But of course, in their fear, the one who can calm their fear is Jesus. So in this case, I guess being close to God is nothing to be feared, because in the fear, that's where Jesus is.
Yeah, I mean, and as we spoke about briefly before, this story appears also in Mark's Gospel, and it's slightly altered, isn't it? Yeah. If I remember, in Mark's Gospel, isn't Jesus actually in the boat with them?
No, he's not. He's been away to pray, but he kind of, Mark gives the impression that Jesus knew they were in trouble, so he went. And you don't get the confession of faith at the end, so you don't have the. No. Surely you are the Son of God.
You do get the story of Jesus. You get the story, don't you, of Jesus being in the boat with them in another storm, and he stills the storm.
Yeah, that's a little bit earlier in Mark, yeah. And you get the confession of faith at the end of that story.
Yeah, and that's the kind of mixture. But going back to what you were saying, I think it's very interesting. I look at it perhaps today from a slightly different angle, and the beauty of Scripture, of course, is that the more you look at it and read it and study it, the more you see a different angle to perhaps according to what it is you're reading or what your understanding of the time is. I think with that particular story, whilst they are frightened in the boat, and there's no reason why they shouldn't be, you're quite right in what you say. I certainly would be. And like you, I'd probably be leaning over the side. I'm not sure. I've been on pretty rough boat trips. But I still... There's something very special, as we know, about the relationship between Jesus and Peter and Jesus. And although Peter does all kinds of things which perhaps best friends often do, like running away and not listening, but it still doesn't stop you caring for the person. You do all kinds of strange things in friendship relationships. But at that moment, Peter recognises, I think, that it is who it is and it's Jesus. And yes, you're quite right. You don't expect to see somebody walking out into the middle of a lake unless they're on a jet ski or something. So it is a strange thing to do, but then that's the very essence of Jesus. Everything he does is strange, or as we heard last week, absolutely miraculous. This is just another miraculous moment in that whole story. And I still think there is something for me in the story that Peter loves his Lord. Yeah. And when he sees him, he wants to be with him.
Yeah.
And when Jesus says, well, come on then. I'm sure Jesus knew he wasn't going to make it the 50 steps to where he was. But Peter was so whatever, but, you know, and out he gets. And we don't know how many steps he took. He could have sung straight away. But I think he probably takes a few. But it's that moment he suddenly thinks, oh dear, what on earth am I doing here now? I still love you, Lord. That's good because I'm going to save you anyway. And he saves all the others. And I'm sure the lake does become stilled eventually. And we know they make it to the other side or wherever they're going, because in the next series of stories, they continue to appear until they run off and hide.
Definitely.
After the last supper.
We don't lose them, I don't think. You're right. I think they're there. I love the enthusiasm, though. That's what it is, that Peter's willing to leap out the boat. And that's the metaphor I like. You know, that are we willing to leap out of our metaphorical boats for Jesus? Are we willing to get our feet wet and risk and be enthusiastic? And
the real thing about Joey is, isn't it? Do we love Jesus enough and trust him?
Yeah. And not always
do we love Jesus
the answer.
And trust him, because that's the very essence of that story for me. Peter did love Jesus enough, and he did ultimately trust him. And on he goes until the next story we'll think about, I'm sure, very soon.
Yeah, in about 5 minutes.
But for me, it's very much about faith, and it's about trust. And I think Peter did trust Jesus, and we know that Jesus loved Peter and the other disciples, I'm sure. But the bond, the relationship between Jesus and Peter is very special, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think that was very good. We got our feet wet in Matthew, and we'll see you again next week when we're looking more in Matthew.
I think if Peter had thought about it, though, he'd have taken his flippers along with him, wouldn't he?
And his armbands and his snorkel.
Possibly. Oh, he must have been able to swim, though. He was a fisherman, so he must have been able to swim.
I don't know, but don't they say sometimes that fishermen I was about to wrap it all up, and now we've gone on to whether fishermen can swim. Some fishermen can't swim. Isn't that the tale, that they would prefer to drown quicker rather than... Anyway, who knows?
Well, I've no idea. I'm sure some bus drivers can't really drive, but there we are.
Right, are we done now?
We're done. Bye-bye, Pat. Bye-bye, Spain. We'll see you again next week, which could be the week after next. I don't know.
David,
however, there we are. It is the day of the Transfiguration today, another mountain story. Bye-bye.
I've got to do the end bit. Oh. It's because he's got excited.
If you are watching, remember you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube at Beaminster Team. Well, you know it all. It appears straight after the film anyway. Bye-bye, everybody.
Oh,
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.